Ancient builders moved stones heavier than a space shuttle without any modern machinery. This is the hidden story behind our world's most iconic monuments, a mystery that has captivated historians for centuries. You are about to uncover the brilliant evolution of monumental stone transport systems, discovering exactly how early civilizations achieved the impossible. We will explore how hunter-gatherers moved mountains of stone long before the wheel and decode methods that still puzzle engineers today. By the end, you will see human history through an entirely new lens. How did societies with simple tools orchestrate such staggering feats of engineering? 12,000 years ago, a sight unfolded that defies our understanding of early human society. In the rolling hills of what is now Turkey, a community of hunter-gatherers began assembling Göbekli Tepe. They were not farmers living in settled villages. They were people who followed migratory herds, yet they quarried and moved massive limestone pillars, each one weighing as much as 20 tons. This was humanity's first great architectural experiment, a project that began long before the invention of the wheel, before pottery, and long before written language. The sheer ambition is staggering. How did they transport these monoliths across miles of challenging terrain without the help of domesticated animals like oxen? The most plausible theories point to a combination of simple genius and immense effort. They likely used wooden sledges, sliding the pillars over carefully prepared paths of mud and damp clay to reduce friction. Or perhaps they employed log rollers, a method where teams of people would constantly reposition felled trees underneath the stone, creating a slow-moving conveyor belt of human power. This was not a task of days but of generations, a testament to a shared vision that compelled people to work for a future they themselves might never see. The psychological shift must have been as monumental as the stones themselves. For the first time, humans were not just adapting to their environment, they were reshaping it on a colossal scale. The successful movement of a single pillar would have been a transformative event, proving that a community, working together, could achieve what any single individual would deem impossible. This primal breakthrough, this newfound belief in collective power, would echo through the centuries, setting a foundational precedent for every civilization that followed. This fundamental shift from adapting to actively reshaping the world required a new kind of intelligence, one that saw the environment not as an obstacle to conquer, but as a partner in construction. The first and perhaps most brilliant method early engineers mastered was leveraging the natural landscape itself. They understood that moving a mountain was infinitely easier if you let the mountain do the work. At the great stone circles of Karnak in France, thousands of standing stones were erected in sprawling alignments. Many of these massive stones were not dragged from distant quarries. They were glacial erratics, colossal rocks deposited by ancient ice sheets that had conveniently left them scattered across the region like building materials delivered by nature. The builders simply identified these ready-made monoliths and moved them the shortest distance possible to their final positions. This was not a fight against nature. It was a collaboration. In other regions, this collaboration extended to the waterways. Quarries were often established upstream from a construction site. When the seasonal rains came and river levels rose, builders would carefully guide their massive stones into the current, using the water's own powerful flow to float them miles downstream. Can you envision the planning, the precise timing required to coordinate with the rhythms of the earth itself? They even positioned their quarries on hillsides, so that every step away from the mountain capitalized on gravity's constant, unwavering pull. This symbiotic relationship demonstrates an ecological wisdom we are only now rediscovering in our modern age. The landscape, with its rivers, its slopes, and its pre-positioned stones, became the most fundamental tool in their engineering kit. It proves a profound point that the very first step in moving a mountain was not brute force, but a deep and intimate understanding of the land. But this deep understanding of the land could only achieve so much. To move truly colossal stones, early engineers had to invent a way to cheat friction itself. The solution was as simple as it was revolutionary: the invention of the roller. Imagine a team placing cylindrical logs one after another beneath a massive stone slab. As the stone is pulled forward, it rolls across these logs. The moment a log is freed from the back, a worker rushes it to the front, creating a continuous, rolling conveyor system powered by human hands. This was not just an improvement, it was a complete game changer. The reduction in friction was exponential. A task that might have required hundreds of people to drag a stone could now be accomplished by a small, coordinated group. Experimental archaeology has shown the stunning efficiency of this method. Just 20 individuals could move a 1-ton stone nearly 200 feet in a single hour. This was humanity's first true mechanical advantage in the realm of heavy transport. The roller was more than just a tool. It was the foundational concept that would one day, after centuries of refinement, evolve into the wheel itself. This breakthrough fundamentally altered the scale of what was possible. Suddenly, communities were no longer limited by the sheer muscle power they could muster. They could think bigger, plan grander, and dream of monuments that reached for the sky. This simple technology of rolling logs opened up new architectural possibilities that would soon spread across continents, enabling the next great leap in our ancient story. Yet even the brilliant roller had its limits. On soft, shifting ground, the logs would simply sink into the earth, trapping the very stone they were meant to liberate. Ancient engineers needed a new solution, one that could glide over unstable terrain. Their answer was the sledge, a simple wooden platform that distributed the stone's immense weight. But the true breakthrough, the moment of pure genius, was not the sledge itself, but what they placed beneath it. To overcome the immense friction, they turned to the most basic of elements: water and sand. In ancient Egypt, as teams hauled colossal granite blocks on massive sledges, workers would walk ahead, pouring water onto the sand-covered path. For centuries, modern observers saw this as a purely ceremonial act. But recent experiments at the Giza Plateau revealed the stunning physics at play. The water, percolating through the sand, creates a network of tiny capillary bridges between the individual grains. These microscopic water droplets act like a potent glue, locking the sand particles in place and preventing them from piling up in front of the sledge. The result is a perfectly slick, hardened surface that drastically reduces the friction. The pulling force required can be cut in half. Can you picture the scene? The synchronized effort of hauling teams coordinated with the water bearers, creating a sliding highway, one careful pour at a time. This was not guesswork. It was applied material science, a deep, intuitive understanding of how to manipulate the natural world to achieve a superhuman task. With this method, they could transport stones weighing dozens of tons across vast, sandy plains with an efficiency that would challenge even some modern machinery. It was a quiet, unassuming revolution, born from watching how water shapes the land, and it unlocked the final piece of the puzzle for moving mountains on the flat ground. But moving mountains across the flat ground was only half the battle. The true challenge was lifting them into the sky. To place a single stone block at the peak of the Great Pyramid, workers had to raise it nearly 500 feet, a task that required a temporary mountain of their own making. This was the era of the ramp, the final and most complex piece in the ancient transport puzzle. The Egyptians did not rely on a single ramp design. Instead, they orchestrated a symphony of inclines. A massive, straight external ramp, built from the Nile's harbor directly to the pyramid's base, served as the primary highway for stones fresh from the quarry. But as the pyramid grew taller, this single ramp would have become impossibly long and unstable. So the builders turned inward. Evidence suggests they constructed a spiraling internal ramp, a corkscrew tunnel built within the growing structure itself. This ingenious system allowed small teams to haul blocks in a continuous, upward spiral, protected from the desert sun, all the way to the summit. The mathematics involved were breathtaking. Each ramp had to maintain a precise, gentle slope, an angle that balanced the need for manageable pulling force against the immense structural weight it had to support. Too steep and the stone would be impossible to lift, too shallow and the ramp would collapse under its own staggering size. This was not just piling up dirt. It was a masterclass in structural mechanics, a temporary landscape engineered with the same precision as the eternal monument it served. These colossal ramps were ultimately dismantled, their earth and stone returned to the land. Their legacy, however, is the permanent stone mountain they left behind, a powerful reminder that the most brilliant solutions are sometimes the ones built to disappear. Even with brilliant ramps and sledges, human muscle alone had its limits. A new era in monumental transport arrived not with a new tool, but with a new partner. The domestication of powerful animals like oxen and elephants fundamentally revolutionized what was possible. This was the dawn of the living engine. In the ancient Assyrian capital of Nineveh, detailed wall carvings celebrate this partnership. They show vast teams of oxen, their powerful shoulders straining, as they haul colossal stone statues of winged bulls, each one weighing many tons towards the king's palace. The scene is a powerful testament to organized, large-scale animal power. But perhaps the most iconic animal engineers were elephants. Across the Indian subcontinent, ancient temple records and local traditions consistently credit elephants with moving the largest pillars and statues, some weighing an astonishing 80 tons or more. An elephant's strength is immense, but its true value lay in its intelligence and trainability. A mahout or elephant driver could guide his charge with subtle commands, navigating tight spaces and complex terrain with a precision that a large team of oxen could never match. This was more than just using animals for labor. It was a profound collaboration between human and animal intelligence, a synergy that created a transportation network spanning continents. The careful, selective breeding of the strongest oxen, the generations of knowledge required to train and command an elephant, this entire system represented one of humanity's first forays into a kind of early biotechnology. They were not just using nature, they were actively shaping and harnessing its raw power to serve a collective vision. This living, breathing technology enabled civilizations to think on a scale previously unimaginable, pulling stones that were once considered immovable objects into the very heart of their cities and temples. Raising a 100-foot stone needle to stand perfectly upright on its point seems to defy the very laws of physics. This was the ultimate challenge for Egyptian engineers, the final, breathtaking act in the life of an obelisk. The journey began in the quarries at Aswan, where an unfinished obelisk, still partially attached to the bedrock, offers a frozen moment in time. You can see the precise channels carved by workers using simple stone balls, patiently pounding out a trench around the monolith. This single piece of stone, intended to weigh over 1,000 tons, was then freed, a testament to unimaginable patience, but freeing it was only the first step. During the Nile's annual flood, this colossal stone was carefully guided onto a massive, specially reinforced barge. The river itself became a liquid highway, floating the obelisk hundreds of miles to its destination with an efficiency that land transport could never match. Upon arrival, the most delicate operation began. How do you stand a building-sized stone on its tip without it shattering? The solution was a masterpiece of controlled descent. The base of the obelisk was positioned over a prepared stone socket, with the shaft resting on a high mound of sand contained within a temporary chamber. Then teams of workers began the slow, meticulous process of removing the sand through small openings. Can you sense the tension, the absolute precision required? As the sand level dropped grain by grain, the obelisk would gradually, imperceptibly tilt downward, its base guided perfectly into the waiting socket until it stood vertical. This was not a feat of brute force, but one of exquisite control, a slow-motion ballet of earth and stone. This combination of waterborne transport and ingenious elevation created the dramatic skylines of ancient Egyptian cities, turning raw stone into symbols of power that reached for the gods themselves. This very pursuit of verticality, this desire to build towards the heavens, was not a universal blueprint. Across the Atlantic Ocean, in the heart of Mesoamerica, a completely different chapter in our story was unfolding. The great cities of Teotihuacan and the Maya world achieved staggering architectural feats, yet they did so by following a different technological path. They were fully aware of the wheel, as evidenced by small wheeled toys found in archaeological sites, but they never adapted it for large-scale transport. Why would a culture ignore such an apparently obvious invention? The answer is a masterclass in context-driven engineering. Their environment and resources dictated a unique set of solutions. At Teotihuacan, builders needed to move vast quantities of volcanic stone across soft, marshy ground. Their brilliant answer was not to fight the terrain, but to build directly upon it. Archaeologists have uncovered the remains of extensive roadways made not of stone, but of carefully laid logs. These wooden paths, sunk into the soft earth, created a stable, reinforced surface that could support immense weight without sinking. Picture a team hauling a massive stone block along this springy, resilient road, a custom-built highway that flexed and distributed the load perfectly for the challenging soil. Meanwhile, the Maya, surrounded by dense jungle and limestone bedrock, turned to their waterways. They constructed wide, raised causeways that cut through the forest, allowing teams to transport limestone blocks from local quarries directly to the rising pyramids in their city centers. In some cases, they even used river systems as natural transport corridors, guiding rafts laden with building materials. These were not primitive methods. They were highly sophisticated, engineered responses to a specific set of environmental challenges. The Mesoamerican approach forces us to reconsider our definition of technological advancement. True progress is not about universally adopting the same tools. It is about developing the most effective solution for your world. Their legacy is a powerful reminder that there is more than one way to move a mountain, and that the most elegant engineering is often the kind that works in perfect harmony with the land it is built upon. Far across the world, from the deserts of Egypt to the jungles of Mesoamerica, another civilization was solving the same ancient puzzle on the most isolated stage imaginable. The Polynesian voyagers who settled the scattered islands of the Pacific faced a monumental challenge of their own, moving colossal stone statues across rugged terrain with nothing but human ingenuity and the resources of a small, remote island. On Rapa Nui, also known as Easter Island, the silent, imposing Moai stand as a testament to this feat. For generations, their transport was one of history's great enigmas. How were these multi-ton figures, some standing over 30 feet tall, moved miles from the quarry to their sacred platforms? The answer, long held in oral traditions, was recently proven through a remarkable experiment. Researchers demonstrated that with just 3 teams of ropes, a moai could be made to walk. Teams would rhythmically pull on ropes attached to the statue, rocking it from side to side, carefully guiding its center of gravity forward with each tilt. The statue was not dragged, it was coaxed into a slow, dignified procession, a method that perfectly aligns with local stories of the Moai walking to their final resting places under their own spiritual power. This was not merely a technical solution, it was a ritual act, a physical manifestation of belief where engineering and ceremony were one and the same. But the story of Polynesian stone moving begins long before the statues ever touched the island's soil. The ancestors of the Rapa Nui people first had to accomplish an even more staggering feat of transport, crossing thousands of miles of open ocean. They navigated this vast emptiness in sophisticated double-hulled canoes, vessels capable of carrying entire communities, their plants, animals, and yes, their sacred stones. This maritime technology was born from a profound understanding of stars, winds, and ocean currents, a knowledge system that allowed them to discover and populate virtually every habitable island in the Pacific. The same cultural genius that mapped the world's largest ocean was then applied to moving mountains on land. This fusion of practical engineering and deep cultural practice reveals a fundamental truth about technological evolution. Innovation does not follow a single, universal path. It blossoms from the unique interplay between a people, their environment, and their beliefs. The story of the Moai is not just about how a statue was moved, but why its journey was as sacred as its destination. While the Moai walked and the pyramids rose on ramps of earth, another civilization was mastering the art of moving stone by turning water itself into a road. In 15th century China, the construction of the Forbidden City demanded a logistical miracle, the transport of gargantuan stones from quarries dozens of miles away. The sheer weight of these stones, some exceeding 200 tons, would have defeated conventional methods, but Chinese engineers devised a brilliant two-part system that harmonized with the very turning of the seasons. When the bitter northern winter arrived, they did not halt their work, they accelerated it. Teams would pour water onto the prepared earthen paths, where it instantly froze into a sheet of perfect, mirror-smooth ice. This created an ice road with almost negligible friction, allowing a massive stone block placed on a sturdy sledge to be pulled by a surprisingly modest team of workers or animals. It was like turning the entire landscape into a vast, naturally refrigerated slipway. But what happened when winter thawed into spring? The solution was just as ingenious. Engineers constructed an extensive network of artificial canals and waterways, complete with locks and dams to control the water level. Specially designed, reinforced barges would carry the stones directly into the heart of the construction site in Beijing. The most stunning example is the Great Marble Ramp at the Temple of Heaven, a single slab weighing nearly 300 tons. This colossal carving was floated for miles along these custom-built canals, a journey that transformed an impossible land drag into a graceful, waterborne procession. This was not just a single trick, it was a fully integrated, year-round transport strategy. The same culture that could command the ice of winter could also command the waterways of summer, demonstrating a fluid adaptability that stands as a hallmark of true engineering genius. They understood that the greatest power lies not in fighting the forces of nature, but in bending them to your will with elegant, seasonal precision. The spark of genius often ignites in one civilization, only to be forged into an industrial powerhouse by another. This was the story of the crane. The ancient Greeks, with their philosophical minds, perfected the basic principle, using compound pulleys and human-powered winches to lift marble blocks with elegant precision. But it was the Romans who took this elegant tool and transformed it into an engine of empire. They scaled the crane to almost unimaginable levels, constructing massive wooden treadwheels where teams of men, walking endlessly inside a giant hamster wheel, could generate the power to hoist stones weighing 20 tons or more directly into place. This was no longer just construction, it was industrial-scale assembly, a relentless process that built the soaring aqueducts and colossal temples that defined the Roman world. Yet even these mighty machines had their limits. To understand the absolute pinnacle of Roman ambition, you must travel to the site of Baalbek in modern-day Lebanon. Here lies the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, a single block of limestone weighing an estimated 1,000 tons. Moving this behemoth required more than just a crane. It demanded a symphony of brute force and meticulous coordination. The Romans would have employed an army of laborers, likely thousands strong, working in synchronized teams. The stone was probably placed atop a forest of massive wooden rollers. As teams at the front pulled with colossal ropes, others at the rear would frantically reposition the freed rollers, inching the monolith forward in a display of raw, organized power. Simultaneously, a massive capstan winches, turned by teams of men or oxen walking in a circle, would have provided additional pulling force. This was logistics on a military scale, a breathtaking feat of human management as much as engineering. But none of this would have been possible without the veins that connected the empire, the Roman roads. These were not mere paths, they were standardized, graded highways, engineered with deep foundations and carefully cambered surfaces to shed water. This network of stone-paved arteries allowed for the efficient, year-round movement of construction materials from quarry to building site across thousands of miles. A block of marble could be quarried in Hispania, travel by sled and barge, and then complete its journey on a smooth Roman road, all with a speed and reliability never before seen. This systematic approach to problem-solving, combining mechanical innovation with unparalleled logistical organization, created an infrastructure that didn't just support monumental architecture, it demanded it. The Roman world was literally built on this foundation of systematic thought, a legacy of stone and road that would inspire engineers for millennia to come. The Roman road system was a triumph of logistics, but across the Mediterranean, a far older civilization achieved the impossible with nothing more than stone and ingenuity. On the small islands of Malta, Neolithic people constructed the world's oldest freestanding structures, moving limestone blocks weighing up to 50 tons without metal, without wheels, and without the vast manpower of an empire. Their secret weapon was as simple as it was permanent, spherical stone balls. Archaeologists excavating the majestic Tarxian temples and other sites have found these carefully shaped spheres scattered near the foundations, silent clues to a lost transport technology. These were not toys or ceremonial objects, but the core components of a rolling conveyor system. Picture a massive temple block being carefully levered onto a track, with these durable stone spheres placed in rows beneath it. As teams pulled the stone forward, the spheres would roll, drastically reducing friction. When a sphere emerged from the back, it was simply carried to the front, creating an endless, reusable loop of motion. This was a brilliant adaptation of the log roller concept, but designed for an island environment where large, straight trees were scarce. The stone balls were a permanent, reliable solution carved from the very bedrock that surrounded them. Once a stone reached its destination, the final act of precision began. Using wooden levers and earthen ramps, teams would coax the multi-ton blocks into their exact positions. They would place a lever under a corner, pivot it on a firm stone, and use the collective weight of the team to lift the block just enough to slip a wooden shim or a pile of small stones underneath. Repeating this painstaking process inch by inch, they could raise a wall stone to a perfect height or lower a massive lintel onto two uprights with a seam so tight you cannot slide a piece of paper between them. This was engineering of the highest order, born from pure necessity. With limited land and resources, there was no room for error or waste. Every movement had to be calculated. Every tool had to be multi-purpose and everlasting. The stone balls were not discarded after a single project. They were likely curated and reused for generations, becoming part of the island's collective engineering knowledge. The Maltese temples stand as a powerful testament to a profound truth, that the most constrained environments often spark the most focused and enduring innovations. The rhythmic beat of drums and the scent of incense would fill the air as entire villages gathered for a sacred task. In South India, moving a mountain of stone was not a silent, laborious chore, but a vibrant festival. Ancient temple inscriptions provide a vivid window into these events, describing how thousands of devotees would come together, their hands gripping massive ropes to pull a single, ornately carved pillar along a road slickened with oils and plantains to reduce friction. This was engineering transformed into a powerful communal ritual. The sheer manpower required was channeled through spiritual devotion, turning a logistical challenge into an act of collective worship. Can you hear the unified chants, feel the shared strain and triumph as the monolith began to glide forward? This was more than just efficient labor management. It was a brilliant system that wove the very fabric of the community into the temple's foundation. The knowledge of how to move these stones was not locked away in an engineer's scroll. It was embedded in the songs they sang, the rhythms they chanted, and the ceremonial steps they took together year after year. Once these colossal stones arrived at the temple site, the next phase of construction unfolded with a patient, relentless rhythm. Builders constructed massive earthen ramps piled high against the growing temple tower. These ramps were not temporary in a hurry. They stood for years, even decades, as each new stone component was carefully winched or levered up the incline. The process was a continuous cycle of placing a stone, adding more earth to extend the ramp, and then hauling the next stone into position. This slow, incremental ascent meant that the temple seemed to grow organically from the land, its form emerging with a deliberate, sacred slowness. The true genius of this system was its ability to preserve complex engineering knowledge across countless generations. The master architect, or esthapati, held the sacred geometrical plans, but the practical knowledge of how to execute them was sustained by the community itself. By participating in the annual rope-pulling festival, a young person learned the precise techniques, the coordinated movements, and the songs that set the pace. They were not just building a structure, they were becoming a living library of construction wisdom. The temple, therefore, was never a finished object. It was a living, breathing social institution, a perpetual cycle of work, worship, and learning that ensured the methods for moving and raising stone would never be forgotten. This seamless fusion of faith and function stands as a profound reminder that the most enduring monuments are not made of stone alone, but of the shared spirit of the people who bring them to life. 3,000 stones stand in silent rows along the coast of France, a sprawling megalithic grid that seems to chart some unknown celestial code. The Karnak alignments represent a puzzle not only of purpose but of logistics. Geological evidence reveals that many of these massive stones originated in quarries several miles inland, a distance that seems insurmountable for a Neolithic society. The solution, however, may have been written in the tides. During the period of their construction, sea levels were significantly higher, creating a network of shallow inlets and waterways that reached deep into the landscape. What is now solid ground was once a temporary coastline. This was the builders' golden opportunity. They likely transported the stones on sledges and rollers down to these newly formed shores, loading them onto simple, buoyant rafts. The sea itself became a liquid highway, allowing them to float the heaviest stones right up to the edge of the future alignment site, with a fraction of the effort required for an overland drag. This was not a permanent feature of their world, but a fleeting geological window they were clever enough to exploit. Can you envision the coordinated fleets of rafts navigating the tranquil inlets, guided by a deep understanding of the shifting land? The very positioning of the stones supports this theory, with the grandest alignments clustering in areas most accessible from these ancient water routes. This entire endeavor speaks of a society with a sophisticated collective mind, organizing the quarrying, the coastal transport, and the final precise emplacement of thousands of stones required more than just muscle. It demanded a shared vision and a hierarchical social structure capable of managing such a complex, multi-generational project. The stones were not just dropped randomly, they were arranged with clear intention, their long axes aligned to the rising and setting of the sun and moon at key points in the year. This fusion of astronomical knowledge, environmental opportunism, and social coordination marks Karnak as a masterpiece of early engineering. It stands as a powerful testament to a civilization that did not simply adapt to a changing world, but one that learned to read its rhythms and harness its transient opportunities to build a monument for the ages. The three colossal stones at the base of the Roman temple at Baalbek are a silent declaration of imperial ambition. Each one weighs in at an estimated 800 tons, a mass so immense it dwarfs even the grandest blocks of the Egyptian pyramids. Moving a single one of these limestone giants from the quarry, a mere half-mile away, represented the absolute outer limit of what ancient engineering could achieve. How did they accomplish this without the structure collapsing under its own weight during construction? Recent research points to a symphony of coordinated force, a system where human ingenuity met overwhelming scale. They likely employed a fleet of massive wooden cranes, their booms swinging blocks into position, while an army of laborers worked in perfect unison. The ground itself would have been a carefully engineered landscape of wooden tracks and rollers, a temporary but vital infrastructure designed to distribute the impossible weight. But the true marvel was the workforce management. Imagine the scene, thousands of men pulling on ropes the thickness of tree trunks, their efforts directed by teams of overseers using horns or drumbeats to maintain a flawless rhythm. A single misstep, a moment of lost coordination, could have meant disaster, leaving a multi-ton stone hopelessly stranded or worse. This was not merely construction, it was a performance of power, a deliberate demonstration of an empire's ability to command both nature and humanity. The project's sheer audacity served a profound political purpose. In a volatile region, the overwhelming scale of Baalbek was a message carved in stone, a declaration that Roman technological and organizational might was without equal. It was imperial propaganda translated into geology, pushing the boundaries of the physically possible to prove a point that would echo for centuries. Behind every colossal stone, there was an invisible architecture of numbers. The physical act of moving a mountain required a deep mathematical understanding long before the first lever was ever placed. In ancient Egypt, surviving administrative papyri reveal that the construction of a pyramid was as much an accounting exercise as an engineering one. Scribes meticulously calculated the volume of stone, the gradient of ramps, and the exact amount of food required to sustain the workforce. they understood that a ramp's angle was not arbitrary. A slope too steep would make the block impossible to pull, while one too shallow would require a ramp of such immense length and volume that it would become a construction project in itself. They used simple but powerful ratios to determine the perfect incline, a precise balance between human effort and material logistics. This was not guesswork. It was applied mathematics on a civilization-wide scale. The true power of these calculations lay in their ability to transform an abstract vision into a manageable step-by-step process. A pharaoh's dream of an eternal monument could be broken down into a daily quota of stones moved, a precise number of workers needed, and a predictable timeline for completion. This mathematical foresight eliminated costly and dangerous experimentation, ensuring that every ounce of human effort was directed with maximum efficiency. The pyramid, therefore, was not just a pile of stones. It was the physical manifestation of a society that had learned to think in numbers, to plan for a future that stretched decades beyond the present moment. This intellectual infrastructure was the true foundation upon which their physical world was built. Across the Mediterranean, Greek philosophers would later formalize this intuitive knowledge into universal laws. Archimedes, with his famous declaration about moving the world with a lever, was not just boasting. He was articulating a geometric proof that explained why these methods worked. Greek architects left behind intricate geometric diagrams that calculated the mechanical advantage of pulleys and levers, transforming practical tricks into a predictable science. This shift from empirical knowledge to theoretical principle was a watershed moment. It meant that engineering solutions could be taught, refined, and applied consistently, no longer reliant solely on the passed-down wisdom of a master builder. The ability to calculate force and distance beforehand meant that a new generation of engineers could confidently tackle projects of ever-increasing complexity, secure in the knowledge that the numbers would not lie. This marriage of abstract thought and physical labor, this quiet revolution in applied mathematics, is the unsung hero of our story. It reminds us that the most enduring monuments rely as much on the strength of an idea as they do on the strength of the arm that builds it. This deep mathematical planning would have been useless without the right people at the right time. The great stone-moving projects of the ancient world were not constant, year-round endeavors. They pulsed with the rhythm of the seasons, synchronized with the very heartbeat of the land and its people. In Egypt, the most critical work did not begin until the Nile overflowed its banks. For 3 months each year, the annual flood transformed the fields into a vast, shallow lake, making farming impossible. But for the state's project managers, this was not a period of idleness. It was a window of immense opportunity. With the agricultural population suddenly freed from their fields, a massive, organized labor force became available. These farmers, who normally worked the land, were now enlisted to haul colossal stones on sledges across wet, slickened paths, or to load granite blocks onto barges that now floated effortlessly on the swollen river. The floodwaters did the heavy lifting, and the off-season provided the manpower. This was a perfect, sustainable cycle. The society was not strained by competing demands for labor. The people could feed their families through farming for most of the year, and then contribute to a grand communal project during the flood, all while being housed and fed by the state. It was a brilliant, holistic system that integrated construction seamlessly into the agricultural calendar. Far to the north, the megalith builders of Europe followed a similar logic, but their calendar was dictated by a different kind of weather. The dense, waterlogged soils of winter and spring would have swallowed sledges and rollers whole, so they waited. They planned their work for the dry, firm ground of summer. During these months, teams could move massive stones across the landscape on log-rolled tracks without the earth turning to a sticky, impassable morass. This careful timing reveals a profound environmental awareness. They were not fighting against nature's constraints, they were dancing with them, using their deep understanding of seasonal change to maximize efficiency and minimize their impact on the land. This was not just about moving stone, it was about building in harmony with an entire ecosystem, a philosophy that ensured these monumental projects could be sustained for generations without breaking the social or environmental systems that supported them. A single rope pulled by 1,000 hands is a powerful thing, but coordinating those hands, ensuring they pull in perfect unison day after day and year after year, required a different kind of innovation entirely, one made not of stone but of social structure. The true engine behind every megalith was the intricate, invisible web of human organization. This was a world of specialized roles, a prehistoric assembly line where each person had a vital part to play. Quarrymen, with their intimate knowledge of stone grain and fracture points, would carefully separate a block from the living rock. Road builders would prepare the path ahead, leveling ground and laying down the wooden or earthen tracks. Vast rope teams, their muscles straining in rhythm, provided the raw pulling power, and overseeing it all were the supervisors, the ancient project managers who translated architectural visions into shouted commands and coordinated signals. This was not a chaotic mob. It was a disciplined, hierarchical society operating with a single purpose. We have direct evidence of this from the workers' villages at Giza, where administrative papyri and inscriptions detail meticulous work schedules, precise daily food rations of bread and beer, and even records of medical care for injuries. This was a sophisticated bureaucratic machine, ensuring that the thousands of laborers were housed, fed, and managed with an efficiency that rivals modern logistics. Can you hear the organized cacophony of such a sight? The distinct sounds of different trades all working in concert. This level of coordination transformed a massive physical challenge into a manageable, repeatable process. The same social genius was likely at work a world away on the Salisbury Plain. The bluestones of Stonehenge originated in distant Wales, and their journey to the final site would have required the mobilization of communities from across Britain. This was not a local project. It was a seasonal pilgrimage of labor, drawing people together for a shared spiritual and engineering endeavor. During the summer months, temporary cities of workers would have sprung up around the site, complete with their own infrastructure for food, shelter, and social life. This gathering itself was a monumental achievement, a testament to a shared cultural identity that could coordinate across vast distances. The technology that moved these stones, therefore, was as much about social contracts and shared belief as it was about levers and ramps. It reminds us that a society's greatest structures are not merely testaments to what its people could build, but to how well they could work together. The most enduring legacy of these ancient sites may not be the stones that remain, but the proof they offer that humanity, when united by a common vision, can achieve a harmony far greater than the sum of its parts. Theoretical blueprints and mathematical calculations can only tell us so much. To truly understand how these ancient stones were moved, we had to get our hands dirty. This is the realm of experimental archaeology, where history is tested not in libraries, but in quarries and on open ground. Teams of researchers and volunteers have dedicated themselves to recreating these monumental tasks using only the tools and materials available to the original builders. One of the most famous experiments was conducted by the Nova television series, which set out to raise an Egyptian-style obelisk. Their initial attempts using sheer manpower and earthen ramps failed spectacularly, with the massive stone nearly shattering. It was only when they heeded the clues left in ancient Egyptian art and employed a method using a pivoting wooden frame and a carefully controlled sandbox that they succeeded. The slow, deliberate lowering of the obelisk into an upright position was a breathtaking moment of validation, proving that the simplest solutions were often the most profound. Another ambitious project saw a Japanese team attempt to construct a small-scale pyramid using only ancient methods. They discovered that wet sand was not just helpful, it was transformative. By dampening the path in front of a sledge, they cut the required pulling force in half, a dramatic efficiency gain that turned a seemingly impossible drag into a manageable task. But perhaps the most surprising revelation came from the coordination of the workforce. In the chaos of a large-scale pull, shouted voice commands and rhythmic chanting proved far more effective than visual signals. The human voice created a unified rhythm that synchronized the efforts of hundreds of people, turning a disorganized crowd into a single, powerful machine. These hands-on projects have resolved debates that have simmered for centuries, moving academic theories into the tangible world. Yet, for every question answered, a new layer of complexity is revealed. Each successful experiment deepens our respect for the intuitive genius of ancient engineers, bridging a gap of millennia by proving that the most enduring knowledge is often written not on papyrus, but in the practiced movement of hands and stone. The sheer physical effort of moving a mountain of stone carved something profound into the human spirit. When an entire community invests its sweat, its time, and its collective will into a single, staggering task, the bonds forged in that process become as unshakable as the monument itself. This is more than just hard work. It is a powerful psychological mechanism that modern researchers call effort justification. We instinctively value something more deeply when we have sacrificed for it. For the individuals who spent years hauling ropes or carving stone, the final, towering pyramid or the silently watching Moai was not just a building. It was the physical proof of their own struggle and triumph, a permanent reminder of what they had overcome together. This shared accomplishment, this memory of moving the impossible, became the very bedrock of their cultural identity. The story of how the ancestors moved the gods' own stones would be told and retold for generations, transforming a logistical feat into a foundational myth that explained who they were as a people. This is the hidden, intangible return on a society's immense investment. These projects offered no practical shelter, stored no grain, and provided no direct defense. Their power was entirely symbolic, but in the human mind, symbolic power is the most enduring force of all. It is what turns a group of individuals into a civilization, united by a story they built with their own hands. The monument was merely the symbol, but the real, lasting creation was the unbreakable social cohesion and the cultural continuity that could withstand the rise and fall of empires. Yet the genius of a single civilization was never an isolated event. Across the vast expanses of the ancient world, trade routes hummed with more than just spices and silks. They were the original information superhighways, carrying revolutionary engineering concepts between distant cultures. A brilliant idea born in one river valley could, within a few generations, transform construction on another continent. We can trace the journey of the compound pulley, a device that dramatically multiplies lifting power as it traveled from the workshops of Mesopotamia to the harbors of the Phoenicians, who then carried it across the Mediterranean to the Greek architects who would perfect it. Similarly, the sophisticated ramp systems painstakingly developed for the pyramids of Egypt were later adapted and employed by the Nubian kingdoms to the south, who built their own stunning pyramids at sites like Meroe. This was not theft, it was a shared acceleration of knowledge. Maritime networks created an even wider web of connection. the sophisticated stone working traditions of Southeast Asia, evident in the grand temples of Angkor, share intriguing conceptual parallels with the methods used by Polynesian voyagers to shape and transport their own sacred stones. These ideas likely traveled with the sailors themselves, carried across the Indian and Pacific Oceans on the same vessels that transported obsidian and shells. Even the legendary Silk Road, while famous for its silks, was also a conduit for construction wisdom, with exchanges between Chinese and Central Asian engineers influencing everything from quarrying techniques to the use of animal-powered winches. This constant global conversation of ideas reveals a profound truth about our shared history. Monumental architecture was never a series of separate inventions. It was a collaborative, international project, a slow-motion brainstorming session across millennia where each civilization built upon the last, adding its own piece to an ever-growing puzzle of human potential. Even the most brilliant ancient engineers worked within a cage of unyielding physical laws. Their world lacked the high-tensile steel cables that can hoist entire building segments today, or the hydraulic pistons capable of pushing thousands of tons with the push of a button. Their cranes, while marvels of wooden craftsmanship, were ultimately constrained by the strength of their hemp ropes and the integrity of timber joints. This created a hard ceiling on the weight any single lift could manage. The Romans pushed this to its absolute limit with their massive treadwheel cranes, but the stones they could lift directly from the ground likely topped out around 20 tons. Anything heavier demanded a different strategy, a clever workaround like the multi-stage ramps used for the pyramids or the sand-filled chambers for raising obelisks. It was a world where the engineering solution was dictated not by what was strongest, but by what was possible with fiber, wood, and muscle. This fundamental constraint extended to the very engines of motion, the teams of people and animals providing the power. An ox is immensely strong, but it cannot pull a 1,000-ton stone. There is a natural, biological limit to the force a living creature can exert, no matter how many you harness together. At a certain point, adding more animals to a single rope becomes counterproductive, as the logistics of coordinating their movement turns into chaos. This is why the movement of truly gargantuan stones, like the colossi at Baalbek, relied on a symphony of different techniques. They used rollers to cheat friction, capstan winches for mechanical advantage, and the coordinated pull of hundreds of laborers, all because no single power source was sufficient. These limitations were not failures of imagination. They were the very conditions that sparked such profound creativity. Forced to work within nature's strict parameters, ancient engineers became masters of efficiency and elegance. They could not simply overpower a problem with more energy. They had to outthink it. A modern solution might involve a fleet of diesel trucks, an approach of immense power but also immense consumption. The ancient approach was one of precision, leveraging levers, lubricated paths, and gravitational assists to achieve the same end with a fraction of the raw energy input. Their greatest legacy, therefore, may not be the stones they left behind, but the intellectual framework they built for solving problems with grace and intelligence. Their constraints bred a form of genius that we, with our boundless power, are only now beginning to fully appreciate. That same ingenuity which moved mountains of stone left behind a surprisingly gentle footprint on the earth. While our modern world relies on diesel engines and steel, ancient projects operated on a fundamentally different principle, one of temporary intervention. The wooden sledges, the hemp ropes, the log rollers, these were all tools made from organic materials that would, after their service, simply decay and return to the soil. The transport of a 200-ton stone might require a vast output of human energy, but it created virtually no permanent pollution or carbon debt. The paths they forged often became permanent features of the landscape, the very roads created by countless sledges and rollers dragging stones to Stonehenge or Karnak eventually solidified into the first durable trackways, some of which still underlie modern roads today. Even the quarries themselves tell a story of renewal. Unlike the vast, scarred pits of modern industry, many ancient quarries were small and selective. Once the work was complete, these sites were often abandoned to nature. Over centuries, soil would reclaim the ledges, and plants would take root in the cracks, slowly healing the wound until the quarry blended back into the surrounding wilderness. This entire system presents a powerful, almost paradoxical lesson for our time. These civilizations achieved their most ambitious architectural dreams not by overwhelming their environment, but by working within its cycles. They used what the land provided, and when the project was done, the land was allowed to recover. The scale of their ambition did not demand a corresponding scale of environmental sacrifice. This ancient wisdom challenges a core assumption of our own era, suggesting that true progress might not be about conquering nature with ever more powerful machines, but about rediscovering how to build in concert with it. The echoes of ancient engineering are not confined to history books. They resonate in the work of modern engineers who, in certain specialized situations, are consciously looking backward to move forward. In fragile archaeological sites, where the rumble of a diesel engine or the weight of a crane could damage irreplaceable artifacts, teams have returned to the sledge and the ramp. They use precisely lubricated tracks and controlled human power to relocate massive finds with a gentle touch that modern machinery cannot replicate. This is not a rejection of technology, but a strategic choice for preservation, proving that the old ways can sometimes be the most advanced solution for a delicate task. The same principles are being adapted for disaster response. When heavy machinery cannot reach a collapsed structure, rescue teams use leverage systems that would be familiar to an Egyptian architect, employing simple levers and inflatable airbags to carefully lift tons of rubble and reach survivors. The fundamental physics of moving massive weight remain unchanged, and in a crisis, the most reliable tool is often the most elegantly simple one. These ancient concepts are even finding new life in the most futuristic of fields. The challenge of moving heavy, delicate payloads on other planets, where every ounce of fuel is precious, has engineers studying the efficiency of rollers and lubricated surfaces. The design of modern warehouse logistics, with its emphasis on minimizing friction in conveyor systems, directly mirrors the lessons learned from wet sand and stone balls. This continuity reveals a profound truth about technological evolution. Progress is not a straight line that simply discards the past. It is a spiral where we sometimes circle back to ancient wisdom, now armed with deeper scientific understanding, to refine those solutions for new challenges. The genius of the first stone movers is not a relic. It is a living toolkit waiting to be rediscovered whenever brute force fails and elegant intelligence is required. Even with all we have learned, the ancient stones still guard their deepest secrets. The massive lintels of Stonehenge, perched high atop their towering sarcens, present a puzzle that has yet to be definitively solved. We know how the bluestones traveled from Wales, and we understand the principles of levers and ramps, but the final act of lifting a 25-ton stone crossbeam and slotting it perfectly into place, high above the ground, continues to challenge our reconstructions. Was it a single, colossal timber ramp built against the uprights, or a more intricate system of levers and cribbing, raising the lintel inch by painstaking inch? Similarly, in the high Andes of Peru, the fortress of Ollantaytambo showcases colossal red granite blocks, some weighing over 50 tons, fitted together with impossible precision. How were these stones transported up a steep mountain valley and across a roaring river? The sheer scale defies simple explanation, and local traditions offer tantalizing yet unverified clues. These are not trivial mysteries. They represent the frontier of our understanding, the gaps in an otherwise remarkable story of human achievement. Fortunately, our tools for investigation are evolving. Ground-penetrating radar now allows archaeologists to peer deep into the earth without lifting a single trowel, mapping buried post holes and ancient pathways that reveal the ghostly infrastructure of construction sites. Three-dimensional laser scanning captures every chip and groove on a stone's surface, creating digital models that can be analyzed for tool marks and stress fractures, offering clues to the exact methods of shaping and movement. The most promising research is inherently interdisciplinary, weaving together threads from seemingly unrelated fields. Materials scientists study the microscopic wear-on stone balls from Malta to understand their precise role in transport. Geologists analyze the mineral content of stones to trace them back to their exact quarry source, revealing the true length of their journey. Anthropologists pore over early colonial accounts and indigenous oral histories, searching for fragments of preserved knowledge that might illuminate a lost technique. This collaborative approach ensures that the story is never truly finished. Every answered question seems to unveil two more, and every new technological advance offers a fresh lens through which to view these age-old problems. The investigation into how our ancestors moved mountains is a living, breathing field of discovery, a constant reminder that the past still has profound lessons to teach us if we are only clever enough to listen. From the first stone rollers at Göbekli Tepe to the monumental achievements at Baalbek, this entire journey reveals a single, powerful truth about our species. Our drive to reshape the world against impossible odds is a fundamental part of who we are. These were not random acts of brute force. Every technological leap, from the log roller to the ice road, emerged from a deep and patient observation of the natural world. They watched how water hardened sand, how ice reduced friction, and how a log could turn a drag into a roll. This was science in its purest, most intuitive form. But brilliant ideas alone are not enough. These stones also stand as permanent testimony to the power of human collaboration and vision. They required the coordinated effort of thousands, a social machinery of specialized roles and shared purpose that could sustain a project across generations. What is truly inspiring is how these ancient innovators worked within their constraints. Lacking limitless power, they instead cultivated limitless ingenuity, turning apparent limitations into opportunities for elegant, efficient solutions. As we face our own complex engineering challenges today, from sustainable construction to interplanetary exploration, we can draw immense inspiration from these ancient masters. They teach us that the greatest monuments, whether made of stone or of ideas, always begin with the same simple, courageous act, the decision to move the first stone. We would love to hear which of these ancient transport methods amazed you the most. Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe to continue exploring history's greatest mysteries with us.